Hey.
Alright y'all, I think it is about time that we talk about Joel Embiid and his most recent injury versus the Warriors that he sustained. Because this will have big implications on the rest of this NBA regular season and probably postseason too. And to start, I'm just confused because I remember when Shams tweeted out the injury report, he had said that this was a torn meniscus for Joel Embiid, yet when I've been doing my research, just gathering some notes for this video, I am seeing other articles and news reports come out and say that the Sixers are still waiting for an injury diagnosis to determine their next steps. So is the meniscus torn or not? I think the people deserve to know. Because I don't think you need me to tell you that the difference between a torn and a non-torn or just a sprained meniscus is a pretty big deal. You know, because if it is just a sprain, it will probably be a couple of weeks of recovery for Joel Embiid. You have to throw in probably his injury history. I think that would round out to about maybe a month or so of time off for Embiid before he's able to come back and be healthy. Whereas if the meniscus is torn, then we're probably looking at more of a multi-month injury where he's going to need at least 2 months off and then some time to ramp up. And because we are now into February and the regular season ends about middle of April, I would have to take a guess that Embiid, if it is a torn meniscus, would probably not be back on the court until the playoffs come. Now, luckily, a torn meniscus is a much shorter duration of recovery time needed than a torn ACL or any of the other knee ligaments. So no matter what, I do think Embiid should be back in time for the playoffs. Now, I'm no doctor. This is just based off of stuff I've seen. Regardless, the more important factor is that Embiid is going to miss some time, probably at least a month or so. And the 76ers have not been that good when Joel Embiid doesn't play. In fact, they have a 4-9 record so far through the 13 games that Joel Embiid has been inactive, which is a very different winning percentage than their current 30-17 record. Not to mention they have slid all the way back to the 5th seed after losing a bunch of games in recent weeks. Now, they're not that far back in the standings. They are half a game behind the 4th place Cavaliers and 1 game behind the 3rd place Knicks. Now, it should also be mentioned though that the Knicks and Cavs have been the 2 best teams in the NBA over the last month or so I'd only imagine that gap between them is going to grow to at least a couple more games than it currently is. Now, luckily for the Sixers, they have a 4-game lead over the 6th place Pacers, which is a pretty sizable cushion in the NBA. I don't think they're going to slip that far without Embiid. Maybe they do, but it's going to take a very long losing streak to do so, and I just think that this team is still pretty good, at least, for a regular season team without Embiid. They've won games before. They just won last night on a Hail Mary performance from Tyrese Maxey, put up 51 against the Jazz, and they got the win. I think they'll be okay from sliding into the play-in spots. But in the case they do slide into those play-in spots, that's where I would get really nervous as a Sixers fan, because even if Embiid is back for the play-in games and fully healthy, I just don't really like the idea of that, 1 game, win or lose, and you're out type of format. So me personally, I would want to avoid that at all costs. Now, another big question that this injury raises is how will this affect the Sixers' game plan when it comes to the trade deadline that's coming up in about a week or so? Because at the moment, I feel like most analysts and just people who are in around talking about the NBA, I feel like most of them agree that this Sixers team is still a piece away from being true elite contenders. Not to say that they don't have a chance with this current roster, because I believe that as long as they have Embiid healthy, they could go toe-to-toe with any team in the league. But for the most part, in terms of guard depth, backcourt depth, they are missing just another stable ball handler and creator that could definitely help out this team if they were to acquire one. I know there have been talks about like a DeJounte Murray, a Malcolm Brogdon, a Bruce Brown. I think any of those would really work for what the Sixers need. But I am curious to see that if Embiid is out for a long period of time, will the Sixers front office pivot and maybe just look to pick up someone in the offseason rather than trying to trade assets for a player to help them win now, just in the case that they don't believe this is going to be their year, again, after this Embiid injury. In my opinion on the matter, I don't think they should change their game plan. I think, with Embiid and these injuries, they're just going to keep on happening. I don't think he's not going to magically get healthier as he approaches his 30s and gets older and older. And if I'm the Sixers, I think you have to realize that your window is probably on the way to closing in terms of being a contender with Embiid as your star player. Now, with me saying that, I don't mean that they should fire all assets and try to make every win now move possible, but I just don't think you should be playing for the long term here and waiting any longer. I think you should be trying to be proactive at the trade deadline still and try and go get another, all-star caliber guy, maybe not even all-star caliber guy, but just another solid role player that could help solidify this team for a hopeful playoff run. Plus, I mentioned Maxi's 51-point performance against the Jazz a couple minutes ago, and this will be a big stretch for Tyrese Maxey regardless of whether Embiid is out for just a few weeks or just a month or multiple months. And that's because Maxey was just voted as an all-star for the first time in his career. It's a big accomplishment for him and someone who was slept on and kind of disrespected in his draft class. But in the past, especially this season, he's had some difficulties playing without Joel Embiid. I remember there was that Christmas Day game against the Miami Heat where he probably had his worst game of the season, but since it was Christmas, everyone was watching and there was no Joel Embiid and he played terribly, at least shot terribly. So not only will it be interesting to see how Maxey is able to take over and perform as the lead guy, lead scorer on this team, but at the same time, it will just be a good stretch for him to get the experience of being the go-to guy and top creator and top scorer for his team. And at the end of the day, I keep coming back to the fact that I actually just really like this version of the 76ers. I do really think that this is the best team they've had in the Embiid era. And overall, they are quietly a very deep team, at least I think so, compared to other teams, especially in the Eastern Conference. Even just looking at their top minutes per game getters, I can see at least 9 guys that I would trust in a playoff situation between Maxey, Embiid, Tobias Harris, DeAnthony Melton, Kelly Oubre. It's kind of the only one that I maybe don't really believe in, but he's been really good so far in his role for the Sixers this season. But outside of that, Nico Batum, Patrick Beverley, Paul Reed, Robert Covington, those are all guys that I feel like we have seen them perform in the playoffs before. Again, without maybe Kelly Oubre or maybe a Paul Reed, but Paul Reed's been awesome this year. Let me just say that. Now, the unfortunate part about all of this and just with the NBA discourse and NBA media in general is rather than actually talking about these things that I've been talking about with how will the Sixers fare? Should they still make a move at the deadline? How will this team be without Embiid? And if Embiid comes back for the playoffs, how will he look? We're probably just gonna get a whole bunch of discourse about the game requirements for MVP and All NBA, and we're gonna have more discussions about Joel Embiid's injury history and why he can't stay on the court and why the Sixers medical front office just continues to mishandle their players. And me personally, I'm just so sick of that shit. It's not Embiid. Embiid wants to play every night. Okay, I think he understands that he is not 100%, but he wants to be there for his team. He probably does feel a lot of pressure from outside voices saying that he is ducking opponents, when in reality, Embiid is just not a very durable player. And it sucks that probably the best player for the last couple of seasons in the NBA just isn't durable, because rather than appreciate how awesome and great a player Joel Embiid has been, everyone would rather just talk about how he's always missing games and always hurt, and it's really a shame. But that's all I got for this one. Again, be on the lookout for any further news about Joel Embiid, because again, if the meniscus is torn or not, will have a big impact on the next steps for the Sixers. Outside of that, how will they fare in the standings with no Embiid for probably at least the next month or so? We'll have to wait and see. But I really do believe in the Sixers team for some reason. But anyway, as always, like the video, comment, subscribe, all those good things, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.